one interview I do remember that I thought was pretty interesting was when you had at Rap City you had interviewed Baby and Lil Wayne, and you were talking
Mm,
about you had Lil Wayne first, and then Baby came out, and
mm,
you were talking about the different people leaving the label, Cash Money. This was
mm,
when
mm,
Wayne was the only hot boy left, and all this other stuff.
mm,
So, being that this is a business, and being that now we see fewer and fewer interviews with the A-list talent like Lil Wayne would
mm,
and remains to be, how did
mm.
you guys navigate that asking those uncomfortable questions and being able to get the answers, even if they were non-answers, but still being able to ask those questions
Mm.
in such a business controlled environment?
Well, I think that the artists knew and the labels knew that it was such a huge platform. It's like, you know, don't screw it up. Don't be like a total dick. Don't be, and by the way, my first interview ever with Scarface and the Ghetto Boys, and shouts out to Willie D. God bless the dead and Bushwick Bill, but Scarface was an asshole, straight up. He didn't get the memo that day. I don't know. He was expecting Tigger to be the interviewer, and I still to this day I don't understand. Does it matter who's interviewing you, bro? You got an album coming out at the time. You're the president of Def Jam South. Be a leader, do your job, bro. It don't matter who's interviewing you. Now, if I'm being a dick and I'm asking you, screwed up questions, or if I'm coming at you sideways, I get it. But if I'm doing my job, my man, do your job. It's a simple equation. So I think that other than that, everybody else understood it. And there may have been a little bit of prep between the producers as well as with the handlers or representatives of those artists to let them know, hey, look, we are going to touch on this. So hopefully they didn't feel blindsided. So while it wasn't always the easiest thing to do, it was still extremely necessary. And when it comes down to it, the audience wanted it. So we had to give it to them.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that's been so disappointing to me as a rap fan and as a journalist and somebody that does interviews myself. The challenge of at one point I could interview and did interview basically everybody. And now
Mhm.
not only myself, but a lot of other people, you just don't see interviews with the A or even the B plus artists really anymore, sometimes at all, and other times they might do one or two interviews. How do you think that the genre, the culture, the artists themselves, and even the fans, what do you think we've gained or lost by the artists doing that?
I think what has been lost in a lot of ways, because again, I talk about an artist's ability to curate their own message. They're not being held to a standard. They're not having the tough questions asked. And in many cases, real journalists and real inquisitive minds like yourself may not get those opportunities because they're just like, look, I can just go and touch this on my own and never have to go through and what was once called the car wash, being the artist and going through that interview and this other interview and that other interview, because again, at the time, those are the only ways to be able to get out the content. So I think in many ways, with the ability, as I said, for an artist to just pick up their phone at any point in time. I mean, look, in the aftermath of the brutal Cassie beating video that ultimately came out on CNN, Puff was able to hop on his own Instagram channel and throw what someone considered an ill-advised commentary at that moment about that. Well, he would have never had that opportunity even 20 years ago. If he wanted to get something out, he would have had to come to somebody like yourself, somebody out of network, somebody with a platform to be able to get that out. But he was able to whip out his phone wherever he was at and and say something. So that is ultimately changed, not always for the better, the ability for the messaging to get out and ultimately what the fans get to see.
Yeah, I think it's a strange evolution, and I think that the fans actually are the ones that lose the most, but I also think the artists do too, because
Mhm.
as you know from being around this so long yourself, they're in a lot of ways they are insulated so much the more popular they get with their own
Mhm.
teams and they're not around people that are not in their circle as much. That becomes less and less regular. And I think
Hmm.
because of that, they're very detached by how they're perceived or even what people
Hmm.
think of
Hmm.
them. And I think that that really hurts because they're not like us. They're not the average
Hmm.
people that can move around, and
Hmm.
they then isolate and separate themselves from people, and that just makes it all even weirder. So I'm
Hmm.
always intrigued of that as things progress. So yeah. So how did Rap City affect you as a DJ and as a personality? I assume that you got billions of more opportunities than you would have otherwise, or how did that work?
I think that that probably would be a thought. Which, and listen, I'll be honest with you, it definitely did. It opened me up personally to an entire world that probably would not have been aware of me or my skill set or what I do or who I am. And while that always remained consistent and the same, it just opened it up and magnified the ability for people to see me at work. So for that, it was amazing. I mentioned about the opportunity to get to a place like Canada, get to places all throughout the Caribbean, and that may not have happened, and definitely would not have happened in the same way without that magnifying glass that BET and Rhapsody provided for me. Uh, I did not. People often think like, "Oh, so you went to school for broadcast?" I'm like, "Nah." Again, this is just me. And I've been this way my entire life. For whatever was integrated into my DNA. God bless my mom for her insistence on my ability to wield the English language like a weapon in some cases, and the ability to communicate. So to utilize that mouthpiece and to be able to have an inquisitive and some would even say intelligent mind to be able to take that information and spew out something on the other side has definitely worked for me and gave me a lot of opportunities, both on the DJ side, personality side, some wonderful relationships. Again, going back to the beginning of the top of this interview and talking about Chris Thomas, the ability to meet and become friends with somebody who you respect so very much like that is something that I will forever be indebted for and grateful for.
Well, speaking of respect and being indebted to, in a lot of your interviews and on our radio show with Chris Thomas, you've mentioned, and your mom many times. So,
Mm.
what, as you look back, how and what did she teach you that has been so integral to who you've become?
Man, that's a great question. So many of the things I think that when you do have great parents or a great parent at least, so many of these things are just they're integrated in you. You hear them time and time again, almost to where you forget that you heard it, but it impacts you in a very sincere and very stringent way. So again, I talk about the ability to communicate. That was something that she was very, very always on top of. She wanted to make sure that you know I knew how to communicate, knew how to deal with people, knew how to present myself in a public forum. Not in regards of anything like this, but just it could be a dinner party or whatever. From the time I was young, the things that she always instilled in me from a moral perspective. Um, standing up for who you are, being as smart as you can, being able to be in any room and being able to communicate with any person and deal with anybody. Those are the things that I very much remember. And while they may not have been stated to me in a very specific language or in specific ways, those are the things that I believe that she really has given me as tools. And without those, we're probably not talking today.